Lord, the light of your love is shining in the midst of the darkness shining. Jesus, light of the world, shine upon us. Set us free by the truth you now bring us. Shine on me. Shine on me. Shine, Jesus, shine. Fill this land with the Father's glory. Blaze, Spirit, blaze. Set our hearts on fire. Flow, river, flow. Flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light.
Good morning and welcome to Let the Bible Speak. This is Brian Poe. I'm the preacher at the Escanaba Church of Christ, and I am your host this morning. We are coming near the end of our series on the faith in the life of Elijah. This lesson is lesson 7, and it is called a faith mentored. A faith mentored. And if you have not had a chance to look at the other 6 lessons, they are on the Let the Bible Speak UP YouTube channel as well. So, lesson 7, a faith mentored. I want to begin also by asking the question that I have been asking in every lesson. How has the life of Elijah and the faith in the life of Elijah inspired you? How has the life of Elijah inspired you? And I hope that as these last few weeks have gone by, that you have developed in ways and learned some things about the life of Elijah that has come to inspire you. I want to begin this morning by reading 2 Kings chapter 1. 2 Kings chapter 1. Actually, I'm sorry, 2 Kings chapter 2. I'm like looking at my notes and it's like something's not right here. It's 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 18. And I know it's a lengthy portion. This is our text for the morning. We're going to read this text and then we're just going to dive into some application and exegetical thoughts. So let's read 2 Kings chapter 2, 1 through 18. When the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha, I do want to stop there for a quick second. Notice that we have 2 characters. If you are familiar with both of these characters, it's just a matter of hoping that I pronounce them properly. If you are not familiar with these characters, there's Elijah with a J and Elisha with an SH. And I will try to pronounce and be very clear to keep them correct. But Elisha is the predecessor, the successor of Elijah. All right. So Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of the prophets at Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha replied, "so be quiet." Now, to clarify, that could be more like, so hold your peace, or just, I got this, okay? So it's not as rude as it may sound. Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha, the Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of the prophets of Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to the Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and you live, I will not leave you." So the 2 of them walked on. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You have asked a difficult thing." Elijah said, "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise it will not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elijah saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and the horsemen of Israel." And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and tore it in two. Elisha then picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood at the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and struck the water with it. "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. The company of the prophets from Jericho who were watching said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting upon Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. "Look," they said, "we, your servants, have 50 able men. Let us go and look for your master. Perhaps the Spirit of the Lord has picked him up and set him down on some mountain or in some valley." "No," Elijah replied, "do not send them." But they persisted until he was too embarrassed to refuse. So he said, "Send them." And they sent 50 men who searched for 3 days but did not find him. When they returned to Elisha, who was staying in Jericho, he said to them, "Didn't I tell you not to go?" All right, that is our text for the morning. We are now at the last day. We're looking at the last day that Elijah would walk on this earth. The scene played out as Elijah was going to town with Elisha, following him, for he knew he was going to be taken up to heaven. Elisha asked Elijah for a double portion of his spirit. As long as he was present when he was taken into heaven, he would be granted his request. Elijah was taken up to heaven, as the text shows. Elisha receives the cloak of Elijah, and he received the double portion. And the spotlight from this time forward is on Elisha. So, I just want to walk through some thoughts with this lesson and what we can take from it. Some exegetical thoughts. First, we have the test of integrity. The test of integrity. They were traveling. If you look at the cities and plot it on a map, they traveled from city to city, and I believe this was a test for Elijah. Because if you look at the cities, Gilgal to Bethel, their first little jaunt, was about 13 miles to the west. Okay, Gilgal to Bethel, 13 miles. And then from Bethel to Jericho, you have about 13 miles back to the east. And then from Jericho to the Jordan, you have just a few miles east of Jericho. You realize that this is a whole day of seemingly aimless travel. Okay, it would have been so tempting for Elisha to say, "Okay, oh, you're just going to go there and back." It's like, "Okay, I'm not real sure if I need to go on this trip with you." So it was a test. And Elisha said, "I'm going to stick with you. Okay, I'm your Padawan. I'm trying to learn from you. I'm trying to watch what a prophet does. I'm going to stay with you to the end." And he stayed with him to the end, and he received the double portion, as you know. The next idea we have is the company of prophets. This company of prophets I want to take a peek at so we understand what this is. This is also known, and some of your Bibles may have this called the Guild. Okay, this is also known as the Guild. A group of prophets, sometimes called the sons of the prophets, and not necessarily a biological relationship. Okay, just the group of prophets, in this case 50 men. most occurrences of this company of prophets is seen in the stories of Elisha. So from this point on, we're going to see it quite often. 2 Kings 2, we're going to see it in chapter 4, in chapter 38 through 41. You're going to see the company of prophets often. And chapter 6, verses 1 through 7, and also chapter 9, verses 1 through 3. You see the company of prophets so often in the life of, in the story of Elisha. In 1 Kings chapter 20, a chapter that we alluded to but we didn't really look at, there's an unnamed prophet. And this unnamed prophet is from the company of the prophets, which is also an indication that it was not Elijah or Elisha, because Elijah or Elisha were not part of this company. They were distinct and separate. So the unnamed prophet was, however, from the company of the prophets. We see these company of prophets, we also see them in 1 Samuel chapters 10 and 19. Okay, so these companies were not bad men. They were actually prophets that God spoke to, as we see in the case in 2 Kings chapter 2. They're just a group of prophets. They stuck together. The Lord spoke to them. They probably did some preaching and teaching. They probably revealed some truth to the nation through special knowledge from the Lord. So they served their purpose. But Elijah and Elisha was not part of this guild, this company of prophets. Furthermore, Amos, in Amos chapter 7, verse 14, Amos speaking to Amaziah, who was a priest in Israel, he says, I'm not part of the company of prophets, which is partly to help understand his role, but also, see, the company, the guild, probably were being paid by the government or by the city or by the priesthood. And Amos was trying to help Amaziah know that I'm not getting paid here. I'm not part of the guild of prophets. I have no oversight. I mean, I really don't even know what I'm doing half the time. I'm just trying to present a message from the Lord. And that was Amos in chapter 7. In the context of this chapter, these prophets were given a word from the Lord, a true word from the Lord to give to Elisha. And they are saying that your mentor, Elijah, is going to be taken up to heaven. And Elisha, and a couple times he says, I know, so be quiet, as the NIV says, but different translations would say differently. Basically, it's I know, guys, I know. So, you don't have to tell me. You don't have to rub it in, I know. We also have this double portion idea I'm going to take a peek at. This is a big part of this transition from Elijah to Elisha. Elisha had walked with Elijah for a few years now, and he saw many aspects of the life of a prophet, and not all of it was good, as we know. He saw many of the struggles and discouragement that Elijah had to go through, and we saw a lot of those in the chapters through 1 Kings. But Elisha would have also seen the power of the changed lives as he watched Elijah, his mentor, go through the nation and speak and do different things. Like, wow, look at the lives being changed. Yeah, it's a wicked nation, and they weren't changing for nothing. But Elisha would have seen that there's amazing things that God is doing through this prophetic ministry. Now, Elijah, as we saw in the text, he asked, what do you want from me? And Elisha says, I want a double portion. I want a double portion of your spirit, verse 9. And the response of Elijah is, that's a difficult thing. It wasn't difficult for God to give it to him, but I think Elijah realized, if you have a double portion, that means you're probably going to go through double trouble. Double of the persecution, double of the people laughing at you. And he's like, it's going to be tough. Are you sure you know what you want? And remember when Elijah went and met Elisha and said, hey, the Lord wants me to anoint you to succeed me as prophet. And he said, in a manner of speaking, it's like, go home. We don't want anything to do with this. But Elisha did. So Elijah was saying, this is a tough walk, a tough road to walk, this life of a prophet. However, the good would outweigh the bad. What does a double portion look like? Well, in the context of Elisha and Elijah, it literally means double. The power. Elisha did roughly double the recorded miracles as Elijah. We read about the miracles that Elijah did in 1 Kings. As if you were to continue reading through 2 Kings and look at the miracles that Elisha would do, it would be roughly double. He truly did get double portion. There's only one person that we know did more miracles than Elisha, and that is Jesus Christ himself. So the power that Elisha would have would be phenomenal. So much power. I encourage you, read further on to the death of Elisha in chapter 13. Elisha, bear with me. Elisha was, he died and he was buried, and it talks about in the story in 2 Kings 13 that there's these people that were trying to bury their dead relative, and they're trying to find a good place. Well, the Moabites, and there's this band of bad people coming, and they're like, we got to get out of here. So they threw their dead relative in this cave, and it happened to be the same cave that the bones of Elisha were buried. And the story goes on that as soon as this dead relative he landed on the dead bones of Elisha, he came back to life, and he gets out of the cave and he's like, hey, wait for me. It's just a hilarious story where he's like, wow. But if you look at just look at it and realize that's phenomenal. I mean, this man landed on the bones of Elisha. Such power is still within his bones that this man came back to life. Can you just imagine that scene? The relatives were looking back, running from these bandits, and they look back, and their dead relative is right behind them. It's like, okay, that's just a phenomenal story. But the key, that what I'm trying to focus on, is the power that Elisha truly did receive. The double portion of Elijah was phenomenal, the miracles. So I do encourage you, read those 13 chapters and just look at the life of Elisha. Now, in our time remaining, I want to look at some ideas of mentorship, because that's really the focus of this lesson as we're looking at the faith of Elijah and the faith, the double portion that Elisha received. But we then realize that Elisha was mentored by Elijah. So let's look at the idea of these lessons of mentorship. One of Elijah's fears, as you saw back in 1 Kings 19, one of Elijah's fears was that his life would soon be over and it would amount to nothing. He would just be done and his ministry would be done. The nation was still wicked. God, what was my life all about? What did it amount to? We remember that story. It was when he was on Mount Horeb, his Mount Horeb experience. In response to that, later in 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 16 through 21, remember, one of the things that God had Elijah go do was go anoint Elisha to succeed you. So he wanted to give Elijah this idea of purpose and this mentorship program, in a sense. He would mentor Elisha for the next few years and not train Elisha to be part of the guild or company of prophets, but Elisha would be the prophet of the Lord, speaking the truth. Mentorship is a biblical idea. Mentorship, by definition, is a wise and trusted counselor or teacher. In other words, a role model or example. And I wanted to kind of bring it down to layman's terms because I don't want to only hear in this mentor idea as, oh, that's a prophet mentoring another prophet, or sometimes a preacher can mentor a preacher, or some level up there, and be disconnected from normal people like us. We can be mentors, okay? And I'm going to bring that out in a few moments, but what are some of the mentors in the Bible? And you're probably thinking of some like Jethro. And Jethro was the father-in-law to Moses, and we know that he mentored Moses in a few things. We also have Moses mentoring Joshua, okay? Eli mentored Samuel. Jesus mentored the 12 disciples. Barnabas mentored Paul. Okay, now Barnabas also mentored John Mark. Now Paul goes and ends up mentoring Silas, and he also mentors Timothy and Titus and many more. Peter mentors John Mark as well. Barnabas and Peter take turns mentoring John Mark. The idea we're looking at, the idea really is leading by example. That really is the crux of this. These men, Barnabas, Peter, Jesus, Eli, Jethro, what was their special quality that they could mentor? It comes down to that they are living by example. And they had people come behind them and look and watch what they were doing. And they said, I want to do that too. And it could be, trying to lead the nation of Israel, or learn how to be a prophet of Israel, or learn how to be a disciple and spurring on Christianity, the disciples of Jesus. But it could just be as simple as living a Christian life, that people say, I want to watch you and follow you. You can be a Christian mentor. I want to look at a few verses that show mentorship. 1 Corinthians 11. You don't have to turn there if you don't want to, but they're going to be on the screen there if you want to take notes. But 1 Corinthians 11, verse 1, Paul says, so that you may be saved, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. And that really is the key here. We do want people to follow our example. We want our children to follow our example. We want people to see us and be able to say, I'll follow you. But the key is we have to be following the example of Christ. We have to be on the right path. Once we are on the right path, then we can be mentoring others, even in the walk of faith in Christianity. Philippians 4:9 also. Philippians 4:9. I don't have these the text in my notes, so I'm actually turning there. Philippians 4 verse 9, it says, whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, this is Paul speaking again, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. So Paul's like, if you have heard something from me, if you have seen something of me, if you have watched me do something, you can do that, because I have tried my hardest to live a good life that people can follow in my footsteps. So, and again, because of what we read in 1 Corinthians 11 verse 1, it's not that Paul was saying, hey, be like me. No, Paul was striving to live a life like Christ. So he could say, if you see me do something, you can live like that too, because it's living like Christ. One last one is 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 7. 2 Thessalonians 3 verse 7 we have, it says here, for you yourselves know how you ought to follow our example. We were not idle when we were with you. Just another example of Paul saying, hey, we have tried our hardest to live a holy life, and because we've been doing it a good job, we're trying, you can follow our example. And that's really the idea we have here, is living a life that is worth being followed. Mentorship is a biblical concept. Although there is really no command, it seems prudent behavior to train people behind you, to let people watch you and let people follow behind you. Live in the life that is worthy, that people can follow behind you and walk in the same steps. If people can't come behind you and walk in the steps that you're walking, then you're not walking in the right steps. Let's just put it for what it is. Let's paint the colors that they're supposed to be painted. Mentorship is a realization also that we can't do it alone. Okay? What you're doing, let people join you and do it with you. Mentorship is when you're doing something good and you want it to continue after you. Okay? I do India work. Well, I can't do that forever. Well, I have someone half my age that I brought on to work with me. And there's going to come a day where I'm going to say, hey guys, I got to tap out. And him being half my age is going to be like, hey, that's okay. I still got lots of fire in me. That's mentorship, being able to let the work that you do continue after you're done. The key is to do something good and to train someone to do it with you and after you. That's mentorship. So how does the life of Elijah inspire you? For me, I can relate to Elijah on Mount Carmel, the high place. But I also can relate with Elijah on Mount Horeb when fear takes place and out of nowhere it's just, oh my goodness. And I can relate when God went to Elijah saying, Elijah, what are you doing here? I can relate to that low spot and God saying, Brian, what are you doing? Brian, do you know who you are? Brian, do you know what? Brian, why are you so afraid? I can relate to those things. And I can relate to times when God says, Brian, I got work for you to do. And he put me to work. He gave me purpose to do. And I know he wants to do the same for you too. Question for you. Where's your faith at today? Where is your faith at today? Can we encourage you in your faith at all? You might be struggling. You might be, where are you at? Can we encourage you in your faith? And or a bigger question might be, have you begun the walk of faith? You might be saying, Brian, these have been some good lessons about faith, but I haven't really taken a first step in faith, or I don't really know if I have. Let us be a part of that. Reach out to us. We can. We'll love to try to help you on your journey to begin the steps of faith. And I'll tell you more in just a moment. But I want to tell you about a few resources before I run out of time. We have, to encourage you in your faith, we have some study guides. This is from World Bible School. If you want to grow in your faith, we'll send you one of these. The first one, you do it and you send us the responses, and we'll send you the second one. Just, it lets you grow. We also, and these are free, okay? So we're not going to charge you anything. We also have, as a resource, a free Bible. This is ESV hardcover, beautiful Bible. If you want one, it's free. Let us know. Our contact information is Marquette Church of Christ, P.O. Box 372, Marquette, Michigan 489-855. www.letthebiblespeak.net. Reach out to us if you have anything. I'm also Brian, the preacher at the Escanaba Church of Christ. Reach out to us however you may. Also, these are some books that I have written, and I'm not trying to use this as a sell pitch. If you do want either one of these books, my latest is the second, Who Do You Say I Am, the blue cover on the right with the cross. I believe it's an excellent book. These can be found on Amazon, but you know what? Just to prove that this is not a sales pitch, if you want and are unable to purchase one of these, reach out to us. We will send you any of these books free of charge. Okay, this is just an amazing resource. The Magnitude of God, Romans, Who Do You Say I Am, Book 1 and Book 2. If you want a copy, let us know. We will be more than happy to send you a copy. So that is almost the finale, and I hope that the life of Elijah has encouraged you. If you have any questions, reach out to us. God bless you. Have a wonderful morning.
The Father's glory blaze, Spirit blaze, set our hearts on fire. Flow, river flow, flood the nations with grace and mercy. Send